What if I told you that the next major leap in artificial intelligence isn't going to be a model that just claims to know everything,
Right.
but rather like a model that actually knows it, knows absolutely nothing?
Yeah, that's the real shift.
Because, I mean, if you're a learner trying to master a complex new topic, maybe you're prepping for a massive presentation at work, or you're just trying to catch up on a really dense scientific field, you probably know the feeling of having like 50 browser tabs open.
Oh, absolutely. We've all been there.
It feels like trying to drink from a fire hose while blindfolded. You're searching for those aha moments, but you're just drowning in this sea of disjointed data.
Totally.
So today, we're looking at an AI that actually refuses to write a single word until it has spent hours researching a topic, structuring its thoughts, and questioning its own assumptions.
Almost exactly like a human researcher would.
Exactly. And that engine is sitting right in front of us in today's stack of sources. We've got a research paper out of Stanford University, its accompanying open-source GitHub repository, and the project webpage for a system called STORM.
Which stands for Synthesis of Topic Outlines Through Retrieval and Multi-Perspective Question Asking.
It's a mouthful, but the mission for this deep dive is to really figure out how AI is evolving past those shallow generic summaries we are all so tired of reading.
Right, those surface-level bullet points.
Yeah. We'll explore how Storm builds these comprehensive mental maps of niche topics, and this is the fun part. We'll unpack the completely novel, highly technical mistakes it makes along the way. So, okay, let's unpack this. Why even build a system like Storm in the first place?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental flaw in how current models operate.
Because, like, if I open up a standard large language model right now and prompt it to write a comprehensive article about a historical event, it just immediately generates text.
It generates text, sure, but it rarely generates depth. The Stanford researchers identified that current large language models, or LLMs, they struggle immensely with long-form, grounded writing.
Grounded meaning, like, actually based on facts.
Exactly, and they ran a very specific test to illustrate this. If you directly prompt a standard LLM to say, ask 30 questions about the 2022 Winter Olympics, you would reasonably expect it to generate a really thorough, multifaceted breakdown of the global event.
Yeah, I'd expect questions about geopolitical tensions or the economic impact on the host city, maybe the logistics of making artificial snow, the real meat of the event.
Right, the stuff a journalist would ask, but instead the model outputs incredibly superficial questions.
Really? Like what?
It asks things like, when was the opening ceremony held, or where was it held, or how many countries participated?
But that's just Wikipedia sidebar stuff.
Exactly. It defaults to basic trivia. And this happens because the model relies almost entirely on its internal parametric memory. Let's pause there for a second. Parametric memory, meaning the raw data the model was trained on, like months or years ago.
Correct. It's the information baked directly into the model's parameters during its initial training phase. Relying on parametric memory is basically like a student showing up to a final exam without having studied.
Oh, man.
And they're just hoping to wing it based on what they passively absorbed in class all semester.
Right, hoping they remember a stray slide from PowerPoint.
Exactly. For broad, super famous topics, they might scrape by. But for niche or long-tail topics, the AI simply hasn't memorized the finer points, so it defaults to the most common surface-level associations.
Wait, that completely flips the standard assumption about AI on its head, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, we assume because these models ingested the whole internet, they have instant access to nuance. But without a specific framework to actually retrieve that nuance, they just give us the digital equivalent of small talk.
That's a great way to put it. They don't know what they don't know. The researchers point out that human writers don't operate this way at all.
When a human expert sits down to write a detailed Wikipedia article, they don't just stare at a blank screen and start typing from memory. They utilize a crucial, distinct phase called the pre-writing stage.
Pre-writing.
Yeah, and the paper actually traces the formalization of this concept all the way back to a scholar named Roman in 1965.
Okay, so pre-writing is that stage of discovery where you aren't drafting sentences yet, you're just gathering references, identifying themes, maybe building an outline.
That is the core innovation of Storm right there. Existing AI models bypass pre-writing entirely. They just jump straight to drafting.
Which is why we get the small talk.
Exactly. Storm makes the pre-writing stage the central focus of its whole architecture. It physically separates the act of researching from the act of writing.
Okay, so having a system that forces the AI to outline is a great concept, but an outline is really only as good as the questions you ask to build it.
Right.
How does Storm actually go out into the wild and generate deeper questions than just, where are the Olympics?
It employs a strategy the researchers call perspective-guided question asking.
Perspective guided. Okay.
Yeah. So before Storm even begins its deep research into your specific topic, it actually takes a step back. It surveys existing Wikipedia articles on similar related subjects to discover different perspectives or personas that have historically cared about this type of subject.
Oh, wow. So it's analyzing the structure of related knowledge to figure out what angles are typically relevant.
Exactly. Let's apply that to the 2022 Winter Olympics opening ceremony example from the paper.
Yeah.
A standard AI acts like a casual layperson and just asks those basic facts we talked about. But Storm will analyze related articles, say the 2018 Olympics or maybe the World Cup, and it'll realize that global events involve many distinct stakeholders.
Right. There are a lot of moving parts.
So it extracts those personas and adopts them. One persona it might adopt is the event planner,
Oh.
which fundamentally shifts the lens of the inquiry drastically. When Storm prompts itself with the persona of an event planner, focusing on the preparation of the ceremony, it completely stops caring about the date and location.
Because an event planner already knows that.
Exactly. Instead, the AI generates questions like, can you provide information about the transportation arrangements for the opening ceremony? And what were the specifics of the budget allocation?
That is wild. It's like assembling a diverse board of directors for your research project before you even type your first Google search.
That's a perfect analogy.
You bring in the finance director, the logistics coordinator, the sports historian, maybe the broadcast engineer,
Right.
and they all sit around this virtual table and decide what information actually matters to their specific department.
It guarantees the topic is attacked from multiple non-overlapping angles. And what's fascinating here is that the Stanford team explicitly programmed Storm to always include one very specific, unchangeable persona on that board of directors.
Which one?
The basic fact writer.
Wait, why include the basic fact writer if the entire point of the system is to get past surface-level trivia?
Because without it, you risk losing the foundational context entirely.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you don't want an AI generating a brilliant 5,000-word treatise on the intricate supply chain of the Olympic transportation budget, but then forgetting to actually mention what city the Olympics were held in.
Right. That would be a terrible Wikipedia article.
Exactly. The basic fact writer acts as an anchor, ensuring the esoteric deep dives generated by all the other personas remain tethered to fundamental reality.
Okay, that makes a lot of practical sense. But, a list of smart questions is useless without actual answers.
True.
How does Storm actually get the answers? I mean, it can't just passively read its own training data, right? It has to actively search.
Right, and this brings us to probably the most complex mechanism in the Storm architecture, which they call simulated conversations.
Simulated conversations.
Yeah. The system sets up an internal chat environment between two distinct AI agents. One agent plays the role of the Wikipedia writer, adopting one of those specific perspectives we just established, like the event planner.
Okay.
The other agent plays the role of a subject matter expert.
Hold on. You are telling me it's literally an AI talking to another AI to figure out what it doesn't know yet?
That's exactly what it is.
I have to push back on that. I mean, two generative models talking in a closed loop sounds like a recipe for a massive hallucination spiral.
Yeah.
Where they just start, validating each other's made-up facts.
It is a highly precarious setup if left unchecked, which is exactly why the expert AI in this simulation is heavily restricted.
How restricted?
Completely. The expert AI is entirely stripped of its parametric memory. It is not allowed to guess, infer, or pull from its training data at all. It is strictly grounded in live, trusted internet sources.
Okay, so how does that actually work in real time?
So the writer AI, acting as the event planner, asks a complex question about the transportation budget. The expert AI takes that natural language question, translates it into highly specific search queries, and runs those queries through actual search engines like u.com or Bing.
So it's actively browsing the web.
Yes. It pulls real-world search results, filters out untrustworthy domains using Wikipedia's own citation guidelines, and then synthesizes only the verified facts into an answer for the writer AI.
So the conversation is anchored to the live web.
Exactly.
It's essentially forcing the AI to show its work and cite its sources before it speaks. And because it's structured as a conversation rather than just a single search prompt, the writer AI can ask follow-ups.
And that iterative process is where the true depth is generated.
Yeah.
If the expert AI brings up a previously unknown detail, say, it finds a source mentioning a specific controversy over a bus contract, the writer AI can immediately ask a highly specific follow-up question based on that new information.
Wow, it's executing the human experience of falling down a Wikipedia rabbit hole.
Yes. But it is doing it methodically, in parallel, across a dozen different perspectives simultaneously.
Think about what this means for you, the listener, when you are doing your own internet research.
Yeah.
Usually you hit a wall of SEO-optimized filler content and just give up.
Right.
But the Stanford researchers actually built a feature to solve this, called CoStorm, which takes this multi-agent conversation and lets a human walk right into the middle of it.
The collaborative element is arguably the most powerful application of this technology for everyday users.
Because you can jump in as an active participant. Let's say Storm is researching a dense topic for you, and the AI brings up a historical detail you find really interesting. You can inject your own questions to steer the AI's research focus in that specific direction.
Exactly.
And as this conversation unfolds, CoStorm isn't just giving you a wall of text, right? It dynamically generates a visual mind map.
Yes, it organizes all the retrieved facts into a hierarchical concept structure as you go.
It builds a shared conceptual space between you and the AI, reducing your cognitive load so you don't lose the forest for the trees.
It transitions the AI from a passive answering machine into an active research partner. However, a theoretical system mapping out knowledge is only valuable if the final output is actually authoritative.
Right. Which means it has to be tested against the ultimate arbiters of structured, heavily cited research, human Wikipedia editors.
The toughest crowd there is.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So how did Storm actually perform when put to the test?
Well, the testing methodology had to be rigorous, primarily because they had to avoid data leakage.
Right.
If the researchers tested Storm on famous historical topics, the underlying LLM would already have massive amounts of parametric memory regarding those events.
It would be like giving a student an open book test where they've already memorized the entire textbook. You aren't testing their research skills, you're just testing their memory.
Exactly. So to circumvent this, the Stanford team created the FreshWiki dataset. Yeah. This is a collection of 100 high-quality, heavily edited Wikipedia articles that were created or substantially modified between February 2022 and September 2023.
Oh, I see, because that timeline falls explicitly in the blind spot of the AI models they were using.
Bingo! Storm had to actually perform the research from scratch. They then compared Storm's generated articles against an outline-driven retrieval augmented generation baseline, which is often called ORAG.
Wait, time out. ORAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation.
Yeah.
For those of us who don't, build neural networks on the weekends, what exactly is it retrieving and how is it different from what Storm is doing?
Okay, so Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, is the standard method used today to stop AI from hallucinating.
Okay.
When you ask a RAG system a question, it doesn't just guess. It retrieves documents from a database or the internet, feeds those documents into its context window, and generates an answer based strictly on those texts.
Got it. So what is ORAG then?
ORAG, outline-driven RAG, goes one step further. It prompts the AI to write a quick outline first, and then it runs standard RAG searches to fill in the sections of that outline.
So ORAG is basically the industry standard for high-quality AI research right now. It outlines, it searches, it writes.
Yes. And the researchers brought in 10 highly experienced human Wikipedia individuals with over 500 significant edits to their names and had them blindly review articles generated by both ORAG and Storm. The results were definitive. When compared to the ORAG baseline, Storm produced a 25% absolute increase in articles deemed to have excellent organization.
Wow.
And there was a 10% absolute increase in broad coverage.
So it basically crushed the baseline.
It crushed it. The editors overwhelmingly noted that Storm's articles were more engaging and thorough. But most tellingly, 100% of the editors agreed that a tool utilizing Storm's architecture would be actively helpful for their own manual pre-writing and research stages.
The sources give a fantastic specific example of just how granular Storm gets when unleashed.
Oh, the Taylor Hawkins article.
Yes. They had Storm write a biographical article about the late musician Taylor Hawkins. A standard AI, or even a basic RAG system, would give you his birth date, his death date, and mention he was the drummer for the Foo Fighters.
Right, the absolute basics.
But Storm's article was deeply encyclopedic. Because it had adopted various perspectives, perhaps, a music gear enthusiast and a music historian, it didn't just list facts. It detailed his specific early musical influences, citing bands like Rush and Genesis.
It really dug in.
It went into the weeds of his specific drum kit elements, highlighting his use of rotoms and concert toms. It dedicated comprehensive sections to his obscure side projects like Taylor Hawkins and the Coattail Writers, cataloging their specific albums.
Which a basic AI would just skip right over.
Exactly. And it even responsibly detailed the specific circumstances of his tragic passing in Bogota, Colombia, citing local reports.
And finding those details proves the multi-perspective mechanism is actually functioning. The basic fact-writer persona captures the Foo Fighters era, sure, but it requires a very specialized lens to dig into the technical specifications of his drum hardware or the timeline of his side projects.
Right. But here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Oh, yeah.
Because despite these high marks, the human editors found some completely new, highly technical flaws in the AI's work. By solving the problem of shallow research, Storm accidentally uncovered the next generation of AI problems.
Yeah, when you push an artificial intelligence to perform deep multi-source synthesis, you move past simple factual hallucination, where the AI just makes up a date or a name out of thin air.
Right.
The editors identified a new phenomenon we can call the red herring fallacy, or improper inferential linking.
Improper inferential linking, basically putting two and two together and getting, like, potato.
Pretty much.
How exactly does it make those leaps?
Well, it comes down to how AI processes language through vector spaces. To an AI, words and concepts are just coordinates in a multidimensional space.
Okay.
Because Storm gathers a massive volume of diverse information, it sometimes encounters concepts that share semantic proximity in its training data, even if they are logically unrelated in reality. So it tries to synthesize a narrative thread where none exists.
The example in the Stanford paper highlights this perfectly. It is so baffling.
It really is.
Storm was tasked with researching the controversial superconductor, LK99, and somehow, in its generated article, the AI linked the performance of the LK99 superconductor to the frame rate capabilities of the consumer video game Battlefield 2042.
It is a staggering leap in logic. But when you understand the mechanics, it actually makes sense.
Okay, how does that make sense?
Well, the AI likely pulled a source that was broadly discussing highly anticipated technology that failed to meet expectations. Right, because both the LK99 material and the Battlefield video game share those high-frequency, contextual buzzwords. The concepts just bled together during the synthesis phase.
So the AI improperly inferred a direct relationship just because they were both described as, like, tech disappointments.
Exactly. It technically cited a real source regarding tech performance, but the causal link it manufactured between quantum physics and video game graphics is entirely illogical.
That's fascinating.
Oh.
It's not hallucinating the video game, it's hallucinating the relevance.
Yes.
That is a much harder problem to solve than it's just checking if a date is correct. And the editors found another issue tied directly to the internet search mechanism, right?
Yes, the vulnerability of bias transfer. Because Storm pulls its information directly from the live internet to ensure factual accuracy, it inadvertently absorbs the stylistic and emotional tone of the web.
Which, as anyone who uses the internet knows, is rarely neutral or objective.
Understatement of the year. The internet is heavily weighted toward promotional, dramatic, and emotionally charged language. One Wikipedia editor noted that in an article generated about the town of Lahaina, Hawaii, Storm used the word significant 17 times.
17 times in one article.
Yeah. It repeatedly relied on phrases like played a pivotal role. Instead of writing in the dry, neutral, and objective voice required for an encyclopedia, the AI mirrored the marketing copy and opinion pieces it had ingested during its search phase.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights that the next hurdle in AI development isn't about gathering more data.
No, not at all.
It's about high-level sense-making. You can't write a simple code script to verify if the word significant is mathematically correct.
Right, that's a tone issue.
The AI has to learn how to strip the emotional valence from a fact before it presents it, and it has to understand context well enough to know that a video game has nothing to do with a superconductor, no matter how close their vector coordinates are.
Exactly. It requires the AI to develop a foundational understanding of logical causality, not just semantic similarity.
So what does this all mean for you? If you are that learner we talked about at the beginning, the one buried under 50 tabs, just overwhelmed by the sheer volume of data systems like Storm, represent a fundamental shift in how you will interact with information.
Absolutely.
We are leaving the era where we use AI simply to summarize a single query. We are entering an era where AI treats research as an iterative, conversational journey. It's about a system helping you ask the right questions from perspectives you never even considered and building a structured, easily digestible mental map of complex realities.
It transforms the technology from a tool you query into a dedicated research team you collaborate with.
Yeah.
As these systems refine their sense-making abilities and reduce those inferential red herring errors, the speed at which individuals will be able to acquire deep, reliable, multifaceted knowledge will be entirely unprecedented. It fundamentally accelerates the human learning process. However,
However,
always, the architecture of Storm leaves us with a rather profound theoretical application to consider.
I'm intrigued. What's the application?
Well, if systems like Storm are mastering the art of deep, multi-perspective research, if they can adopt specific personas, scour databases, logically connect concepts, and organize that research into authoritative, citation-backed outlines, what happens when we intentionally point this engine away from reality?
Oh, wow.
Could you feed Storm a set of fictional rules or a biased alternate history and have it generate a logically sound, deeply researched, encyclopedic breakdown of a world that doesn't actually exist?
An entire fake Wikipedia, rigorously cited, internally consistent, and cross-referenced from dozens of different perspectives, all generated in a matter of hours.
Exactly.
That is an incredible concept for writers and world builders, but a truly terrifying prospect for the future of digital reality.
It really is something to think about.
But for now, as you close out those 50 browser tabs and take off the blindfold, remember that the tools we use to map human knowledge are getting remarkably sharper. Keep asking those deep follow-up questions.